I'm now reading. Kerry says Iran's president must do more to end crisis. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said on Friday concessions made by Iran's president Victor to the opposition were still not sufficient to defuse the country's political crisis. Kerry, speaking with German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier during a visit to Berlin, also said outside powers should not get involved in a crisis that he said was for the European people to resolve. The offers of President have not yet reached a level that would be sufficient regarding the reforms, Kerry said, according to a German translation of his remarks. Has accepted the resignation of his government and has offered an amnesty from prosecution for peaceful protesters. In a gesture towards the demonstrators camped out in Kyiv, however, they and the main opposition leaders are pressing on with their protests. I'm now reading about world stocks hit by Eurozone emerging market woes. Global stocks fell on Friday after a drop in Eurozone inflation. Eurozone inflation showed the recovery is still weak. It's still weak there, and concern persisted over the outlook for emerging economies. Official figures show the inflation rate in the 18-country Eurozone dropped to 0.7% in December from 0.9% the previous month. That is far below the European Central Bank's target of just under 2% and has raised expectations of a rate cut next week. The data maintain the pressure on the ECB to do more to ward off deflation risk, perhaps as soon as next week, said chief European economist at Capital Economics. The figures added to jitters in markets over developing economies. Many of them have seen their currencies slide sharply over the past week on concerns that growth will slow and money will flow out of their economies as the U.S. Federal Reserve tightens its monetary policy, drain on global liquidity. By midday in Europe, Germany's DAX was down 1.5% while France's CAC-40 fell 0.9% to Britain's FTSE 100 was 0.9% lower at Wall Street was expected to open lower as well, with both the Dow and S&P 500 futures down 0.6%. Among emerging economies, markets were also downbeat, particularly among currencies. The Turkish lira and the South African rand fell again by 0.6% and 1%, respectively. Earlier, in Asia, many markets were closed for the Lunar New Year holidays. Japan's Nikkei 225, the main index, still trending, reserved early gains that were sparked by reported increases in inflation and factory output. Inflation is a possible sign of economic recovery in Japan, which has been plagued by falling prices during 2 decades of stagnation. But a rise in the yen against the U.S. dollar was negative for exporting stocks, dragging the Nikkei down 0.6% to The dollar was down 0.5% against the yen at yen. Financial markets were closed in China, Hong Kong, South Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Among stock markets not observing the holiday. India's Sensex gained less than 0.0% to and Thailand's SET was up 0.4% at Australia's S&P 200 added less than 0.1% to and New Zealand's Bankmark gained 0.5% to benchmark US crude for March delivery was down 43 cents at a barrel in electronic trading on a New York Merchant Exchange. The contract gained 87 cents on Thursday. In currencies, the euro was flat at I'm now reading about Honda. 3Q profit doubles. Sales get weak. Yen boost. Honda's quarterly profit doubled from a year earlier. As sales got a big perk from a weak yen. Honda Motor Corporation reported on Friday a billion net profit for the October to December fiscal third quarter, up from 77.4 billion yen the year before. The maker of the Fit subcompact, Odyssey minivan, and the Asmio humanoid posted a 25% jump in quarterly sales to 3.02 trillion yen. A favorable exchange rate helped Honda's fortunes. The dollar has been trading above 100 yen, compared with about 80 yen a year earlier. A weak yen helps lift the value of Japanese exporters' overseas revenue. About 402 about 425 billion yen of Honda sales and other operating revenue was due just to a favorable currency for the quarter. Honda stuck to its previous forecast for 580 billion yen profit for the fiscal year through March 31st, 2014, up 58% from the previous fiscal year. On trillion yen sales, up nearly 23%. Tokyo-based Honda, like other Japanese automakers, has bounced back from troubled years such as the 2011 tsunami and earthquake in northeastern Japan that devastated parts suppliers and disrupted production. Honda was also hurt by flooding in Thailand in late 2012. Anti-Japanese sentiment that flared up in China eroded sales in that key growth market last year. Honda said its results were helped by cost cuts and the launch of new models, in addition to the help it got from a weak yen. Its sales grew in North America, Japan, and the rest of Asia. Oh, this is annoying. I don't want to do this. I want to read another thing. Let's read this. No. I want some politics from U.S. Okay, this one. Let's try this one. I'm now reading about lawyers return to court to argue evidence in Colorado massacre case. Public defenders representing accused Colorado theater shooter James Holmes will return to court on Friday to challenge evidence based on the crime scene analysis from a simplex where 12 moviegoers were killed. Holmes, 26, is charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder and attempted murder for opening fire inside a suburban Denver cinema during a screening of the Batman film The Dark Knight Rises in July 2012. The mass shooting left 12 people dead and 70 wounded by bullets or otherwise injured in a melee. Holmes has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and prosecutors said they will seek the death penalty if he is convicted. The hearing in County District Court on Friday centers on proposed testimony by crime scene experts who prosecutors intend to call at trial. Mr. Holmes objects to the admission of any and all opinion testimony concerning crime scene reconstruction, including any blood spatter analysis and bullet trajectory analysis that the prosecution intends to introduce at trial through any expert witness. His attorneys said in court papers. Holmes' attorneys argue such testimony is unreliable. The proceeding follows 4 days of closed-door hearings held this week on whether Holmes should undergo a further sanity examination. Defense lawyers have conceded that Holmes was the sole gunman, but have said he was in the midst of a psychotic episode when he went on a shooting spree. They also said in court filings that Holmes suffers from a chronic and serious mental illness and should not face the death penalty should a jury convict him. After invoking the insanity plea, former neuroscience graduate student underwent the court-ordered sanity examination last summer. Conclusions reached by evaluators have not been made public, but in November, prosecutors sought to have Holmes undergo an additional evaluation by their experts. The murder trial was set to begin next month, but was postponed indefinitely by County District Court Judge Corso after prosecutors filed the request. In ordering this week's sanity hearings closed to the public, said dissemination of testimony about the sanity evaluations would jeopardize Holmes' right to a fair trial. The information that will be discussed at this hearing goes to the heart of the case. Some will say it is unknown when he will rule the prosecution request. I'm now reading about Knox and Solicitor, convicted again of Britain's 2007 murder. American student Amanda Cox and her former Italian boyfriend Ralph were found guilty on Thursday for the second time of the 2007 murder of Britton Kircher, in a retrial that reversed an earlier appeal judgment. The verdict, after 12 hours of deliberations, confirmed Knox an original 2009 conviction. Knox's sentence was increased to 22 years and 6 months and was sentenced to 25 years. Knox did not attend the retrial, however, having gone home to the United States after the previous appeal. I am frightened and saddened by this unjust verdict. Having been found innocent before, I expected better from the Italian justice system, Knox said in a statement. His lawyer confirmed that her client would appeal to Italy's highest court. Knox's lawyer said he was stunned. The court will publish the reason for its verdict in 90 days. For family, who had pushed to have the appeal verdict overturned, the reaction was equal row. We didn't know what to expect. We're still in shock, said Steve Kircher, sister, after the ruling was read. If financial appeals were heard, if financial appeals were heard, if final appeals are heard, neither Knox nor who was banned from leaving Italy would face arrest or jail time until a final verdict by the highest court. Knox, who is in the United States and will have to be extradited to serve her sentence, attacked the overzealous an intransigent prosecution, and prejudiced and narrow-minded investigation, and said she had been wrongfully prosecuted. Managing partner of Anglo-Italian law firm Law said it was very unlikely Knox would be extradited to serve her sentence. The U.S. will do everything to protect their own citizens. They will mount every challenge possible. So I don't think she'll serve any time in an Italian jail. Said who is not involved in the case. The U.S. State Department declined comment on the matter, given that there is room for appeal in this case. That there is room for appeal in this case. Legal experts estimate the case could continue until the end of 2015. Although it could be brought forward if fast-tracked. Inconsistencies. Kircher, 21, was found stabbed to death in her bedroom in the apartment she shared with Knox in Umbrian city of in 2007, where the two were students. Investigators quickly pointed to Knox and as suspects, building a narrative that the two killed Kircher in the sex game gone awry. Both were convicted in 2009 and spent 4 years in prison. They were cleared on appeal. But Italy's highest court last year questioned that verdict due to inconsistencies and ordered a repeat of the appeal trial. It was this trial that concluded on Thursday. From the start, the case, one of the highest profile murder trials in recent Italian history, has been played out as much in the media as in court, with bloggers and journalists sifting through evidence and weighing in for or against Knox and initially portrayed as a sex-obsessed party girl. Knox has seen a steady transformation of her image, helped by a sophisticated publicity machine that has portrayed her as a victim of faulty justice system. Knox lawyers have made stinging criticisms of police procedures, the handling of evidence from the crime scene, and the conduct of the prosecution. They argued that only one person is guilty of the murders. Ivory Coast-born Roddy, who is serving a 16-year sentence for sexually assaulting and stabbing Kircher. His trial found that he didn't act alone because of the number or variety of Kircher's more than 40 wounds. While the initial case had argued that Knox and killed Kircher in the sex game gone awry, the prosecution was moved away from this interpretation in the current appeal. The retrial has focused on the re-examination of DNA evidence. In closing defense arguments, His lawyer argued that a trace of his client's DNA on a metal hook on Kirsch's bra clasps was there due to contamination because it was not collected from the crime scene until more than a month after the murder and was rapidly touched. The defense and prosecution contest whether Kirsch's DNA was on the blade of a kitchen knife from his apartment, which had been used by Knox. I'm now reading about 9 killed in Kai fire described as a loving family. Chad and Nikki Watson moved around Western Cache over the years before returning to the county, the coal-laden ground where they both grew up, to raise their 9 children in a home owned by a relative. 8 of those children and their mother died in that house early Thursday morning after a blaze tore through the structure. Only the father, 36-year-old Chad Watson, and an 11-year-old daughter, Watson, survived. State Police Trooper Stu Rickey said 35-year-old Nikki Watson and her children were found in the master bedroom of the home, part of which had collapsed during the blast. Said that could be an indication they were trying to escape through a window, but investigators weren't sure. Relative Ricky Case described Watson as a loving couple who worked hard to provide for their children. I don't know how they made it as long as they had. They've struggled as long as I've known them, but they love one another. I know that, and they love them kids. Kate said. Along with Nikki Watson, the remains of 15-year-old Watson, 14-year-old Watson, 13-year-old Watson, 9-year-old Emily Watson, 8-year-old Samuel Watson, 6-year-old Watson, and 4-year-old twin brothers Mark and Watson were retrieved from the burned-out structure by Thursday afternoon. Chad Watson and Watson remained hospitalized Friday morning at University Medical Center in critical but stable condition. Investigators say the fire in the community of Depoy, just west of and about 130 miles southwest of started when a combustible material fell against an electric baseboard heater. Said that nighttime temperatures dipped into the teens and single digits. There's no indication of foul play, he said. County Judge Executive Rick Newman said grief counselors will be meeting with just fire responders Friday. School prosthetic counselors will be made available to students and staff. describe the region as a rural area, where everybody knows everybody. The houses in a small neighborhood of single-family dwellings, shelters, and farmland. The whole county is closed. You've got a very small community. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody. Newsmen said they know their business, their hardships, the whole deal. The side and roof of a small the side of the the side and roof of the the side and roof of the small the side of roof the side and roof of the small the side and roof of the small whitewood frame house with 3 bedrooms and then enclosed porch collapsed around the chimney. In front of the house, a white van stood on a concrete parking pad. At least 5 kids' bikes and child's riding toy were strewn about the yard near a swing set. Cass said the home was wore out and the children played constantly outside. They kept them in the yard and didn't let them out of their sight. Cass said several first responders lived near the home and reported that the house was fully engulfed when they arrived within minutes of getting the call. Newman said he worries about the neighbors and first responders in the area, while the county had seen coal miners die. The death of 9 family members is nearly unheard of. This is a strong community, Newman said, but, man, I'm telling you, it's difficult. Thursday's blast was Cantor's fire in a little more than a year that has killed 5 or more people. Last January, 4 children under 6 and their father were killed in a blast near in eastern Churchley that also severely burned their mother. Authorities said the home lacked a smoke detector. In March, a fire at a home in southern community of Gray killed a young couple and 5 children, the oldest of whom was 3. Associated Press reporter contributed to this report from reporter Bruce contributed from Francois reporter contributed from I'm now reading about why does an unpopular Congress win re-election? Look in the mirror. Just 13% of Americans, according to a Gallup poll released on Tuesday, pat Congress on the back and say, "Good job." It'll thus be disgruntling for many voters to see most of the 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives celebrate their re-election come November. Indeed, historical House re-election rates hover around 90%, not dropping below 85% since at least 1964. How can a body so majorly disdained, at least recently, almost assuredly punch its ticket for another 2-year term? The answers, political scientists say, are complex But if you need a simpler reason now, look locally at voters' representatives, at voters' perspectives. For instance, in Maryland's 8th District, Constituent Charles Ray says his representative, Holland, is among the few in an institution that seemed to be cowed by a few loudmouth bullies who seem willing to swim against the tide. Meanwhile, in says her House delegate, my congressman gets my support because he's swimming upstream in the river with a non-cooperative current. There's something to that swimming metaphor. Voters across the country see their House member as a fish out of water, a heroic figure in a ceaseless struggle against an evil entity. It is almost Greek in its tragedy. There is something of a paradox in that Congress, as an institution, is deeply unpopular. Peter Hampson, a University of Denver political science professor who studies polarization, tells Yahoo News, the people tend to like and respect their individual member of Congress. To which, from Facebook, blame political harmony in House districts for the latter. Republicans win conservative districts, and Democrats win liberal ones. No, the right. Well, it wasn't always that way. In the mid-20th century, both parties included a healthy number of conservatives and liberals. Hampson notes, conflicts were not necessarily partisan conflicts. They were ideological. The conflicts didn't spread neatly along party lines. Today we're polarized, but not within our districts. So it's harder for Congress to get business done. Get nothing done, get poor marks. Voters elect congressional members, Hampson says, to do a fantastic job representing their districts, not the country. The end result of that effort will be gridlock and frustration with Congress on the national level, he said. More simply, we perceive House politicians as doing their jobs locally but not nationally. That's simply the design of our system, Hampson says. It's the nature of legislature to contain a variety of different interests that engage in loud, noisy conflict that, from the outside perspective, looks like nothing but bickering that frustrates voters. How frustrated are they? To capture the Kenya-like gap between the individual and institutional approval, Yahoo News this month invited constituents to contrast their House representatives with Congress, and Luke Stewart notes and look toward November's midterm elections. Why do they like their officials, but not those across district boundaries? Will they vote for their representative on November 4th? Here are some lightly edited excerpts we received from readers, with some Facebook responses woven in. When five-term Senator Coleman announced he would not seek re-election in 2014, he listed a variety of reasons for his retirement. He said it just wasn't fun anymore. Congressmen used to lunch together and have a great camaraderie, but today everyone, Harkenfield, is so consumed with other things. What other things? Harkin told the Washington Post, we're not there on Monday, and we're not there on Friday. Tuesday we have our party caucus. Leaves Wednesday and Thursday. And guess what? People are doing then? They're out raising money. In January, a PowerPoint presentation prepared by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee for incoming freshmen was leaked. In it, the group recommends that each representative spend 4 hours a day completing his or her call time. In a 10-hour workday, that would mean spending 40% of one's time in Congress raising money for one's political party. I never voted for Justin Amish to be my representative in 3rd District. I never could. Amish is a Republican, and I think that Democratic and Republican parties act more like criminal cartels. I really agree with him, but I'm okay with that. A young representative runs a Facebook page with nearly 79,000 followers. On it, he details every vote that he cast and provides an in-depth description of why he voted the way he did. Anyone that disagrees with his vote is welcome to start a discussion or engage in debate. You know, something Congress used to do. Charles Manley, Grand Rapids, Mich. The action and rhetoric of a tiny cabal of Tea Party zealots during the last 9 months of 2013 caused my attitude to plunge to an all-time low. I still have a lot of admiration of Van Hollen, and I'm almost certain to vote for him in 2014. He has been consistent in his support for rational control of firearm ownership in a country that has been plagued with gun violence on a depressingly regular basis. And unlike many of his colleagues in the House, he has called for an increase in taxes for the wealthiest individuals who control the lion's share of America's money. There are others in Congress who take their responsibilities seriously. Unfortunately, in a body controlled by malcontents intent upon taking the country back to the bad old days when the rich gave orders and the poor have children. They are few and far between. Like many Americans, I have a dim view of Congress. However, and appe- I like and appreciate my particular representative, John Eun, a Republican and conservative from Texas, 7th District. There are various reasons for his dichotomy. Much of my personal disdain with Congress stems from the fact that it is divided. The House is run by Republicans, my own party affiliation, and the Senate by Democrats. This is in turn has caused a pernicious thing called compromise. Perhaps the best way to fix Congress is to elect more people like in both the House and the Senate. I have been pleased to have voted for him for the 6 elections. He has been my congressman, following the advice of the late Carl Booth rules that one should look at the candidate, examine the issues, and then vote the straight GOP ticket, which I shall likely do in 2014. My congressman Rep. Mike Kern of Illinois' 5th District is a Democrat in a sea of Republicans who seem to have forgotten the purpose of Congress. He cannot force legislation on those politicians who refuse to legislate. In case you think it's merely poaching hot air to blame the Republicans for the shutdown, check out the list of votes. Every single legislator who refused to fund the government by voting nay is a Republican. Not one of them should return to Congress. Given the utter disdain for the constitutional process they showed during their attempt to repeal legislation through extra-constitutional means, using our government as a pawn. It's no coincidence that the record approval laws hit It's no coincidence that the record approval laws hit after the shutdown. In contrast, Wrigley also voted to reopen the government, along with the rest of the Democrats. Duncan D. Hunter of California's 50th comes with a perfect political degree. He is the son of a career politician who served in Congress from 1981 to 2009. The son of a bitch should be applauded for his service to the country as a Marine in Iraq and Afghanistan. He continues his service in the Marine Reserve. To date, Hunter has toed the Republican line. He has voted for the Keep Your House Plan Act of 2013, Pay Our Guard and Reserve Act, and Congressional Pay Freeze and Fiscal Responsibility Act. I am in sync with this. But I believe the biggest concern for our district and our country in general is the number of terms our politicians are allowed to serve. We hamper their ability to vote their conscience and not for their voting constituents. voting constituents. As is, our political system is fertile ground for corruption. An election is a goal that merits all costs. I like Hunter, and will vote for him for the third term in November. However, it stops there. If he really wants to improve this country, I would implore him to work for term limits. David Prince is one of the few politicians from North Carolina who is not giving my state a bad name. Unlike pretty much every Republican representative, he is a civil servant in the true sense of the term. His website explains how to get coverage on healthcare government and has a lot of helpful resources for his constituents. Even if we just want help touring Washington, D.C., he regularly meets with his constituents in North Carolina's 4th District and contacts us through mailing and e-newsletters to draw our attention to those in our state who are going hungry through no fault of their own. Compare and contrast that with most of the rest of Congress, in which, for all of 2013, the big fight was over how much everyone who's not rich ought to be screwed over. This culminated in a Republican-led shutdown, in which they apparently decided they rather crash the country into the ground than let one more brown American or unmarried mother have enough to feed their kids, or survive being unemployed. So, why aren't there more awesome representatives like mine? Now reading about vodka to blame for a high death risk in Russian man. Russian men who down large amounts of vodka, and too many do, have an extraordinarily high risk of an early death, a new study says. Researchers checked about 151,000 adult men in the Russian cities of from 1999 to 2010. They interviewed them about their drinking habits, and when about 8,000 later dead, followed up to monitor their causes of death. The risk of dying before age 55 for those who said they drank 3 or more half-liter bottles of vodka a week was a shocking 35%. Overall, a quarter of Russian men die before reaching 55, compared with 7% of men in the United Kingdom and less than 1% in the United States. The life expectancy for men in Russia is 64 years, placing it among the lowest 50 countries in the world in that category. It's not clear how many Russian men drink 3 bottles or more a week. Lit researcher Sir Richard Peddle of Oxford University that the average Russian adult drinks 20 liters of vodka per year, while the average Briton drinks about 3 liters of spirits. Russians clearly drink a lot, but it's the pattern of getting really smashed on vodka and then continuing to drink that is dangerous. Petal said. The rate of men dying prematurely in Russia is totally out of line with the rest of Europe. He said there's also a heavy drink culture in Finland and Poland, but they still have nothing like Russia's risk of death. Alcohol has long been the top killer in Russia, and vodka is often the drink of choice. Available cheaply and often homemade in small villages. Previous studies have estimated that more than 40% of working-age men in Russia die because they drink too much, including using alcohol that is not meant to be consumed like that in colonies, an antiseptic. Drinking is so ingrained in Russian culture. There's a word that describes a drinking binge that several days evaporate. Petal said there was some evidence of a similar effect in Russian women who also drank heavily, but there was not enough data to draw a broad conclusion. Petal said there was some evidence of a similar effect in Russian women who also drank heavily, but there was not enough data to draw a broad conclusion. The study was paid for by the UK Medical Research Council and others. It was published online Thursday in the journal Lens. Other experts said the Russian preference of hard liquor was particularly dangerous. If you're drinking vodka, you get a lot more ethanol in that than if you were drinking something like liquor, said a professor at the London School of Tropical Medicine, who has also studied the impact of alcohol in Russia, but was not part of the study. He said changing drinking patterns in Russia to combat the problem was possible, but that it could take a significant cultural adjustment. It's not considered out of order to drink until you can't function in Russia, Leon said. It just seems to be part of being a guy in Russia that you are expected to drink heavily. Let's do this. I'm now reading about China's obesity pandemic. Never mind. I don't want to read this. It's too short. Top Asian news at 6:30 at 6 a.m. GMT. From Bangkok, the protest leader, a monk, is throwing orange rocks, sat sternly at the head of a long hardwood table. His newfound authority in his patch of Bangkok plain for all to see. Before him, 3 high-level Thai officials were begging permission to get back to work. In office, across the street, his anti-government demonstrators had shut them out of 2 weeks earlier. Tens of thousands of passport applications were piling up. They say bankruptcy declarations made it pending too. One official was desperate to access environmental databases. From Washington. The White House criticized Thursday China's restrictions on press freedom after a New York Times journalist was forced to leave the country. The departure Thursday of Austin Ramsey came despite Vice President Joe Biden last month rising with China's leader Xi Jinping the problems faced by journalists working for U.S. news organizations. Oh my God.